Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. And AM 630. WMAL.
And a very good morning, folks. It's 8:06 on WMAL. Mornings on the Mall.
Man, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Oh,
we got
man.
more stuff going on right now than you can shake a stick at.
We could do 4 more hours.
I'm telling you, we got 2 generals who are in trouble. We got a Benghazi investigation. And on top of all that, little side note, that apparently one of the FBI agents who was initially brought in to investigate this email thing, he got taken off the case. Why? Because he had earlier sent a picture of himself to Jill Kelly in which he was not wearing a shirt.
That is
I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
You know what? I got an email from Anthony Weiner saying, hello, I mean, why? I didn't do anything compared to this stuff.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Well, here's a guy who would never send a topless picture of himself.
No, he would not.
No one would look at it.
I may be going out on a limb there, but Judge Andrew Napolitano joins us now. Your brand new book, Theodore and Woodrow, is out now, right? It's available?
It is.
That's
it
fantastic.
is, Larry and Brian. Good morning, guys.
Good morning. How
now,
are
we
you?
want to talk about the book. I've got some really good questions for, but we got to ask your reaction to this
Sure.
unfolding story.
My reaction is that the FBI should have better things to do than examine something that does not have national security or criminal implications. You know, they started out, they claim, investigating this because Petraeus was the victim. Petraeus may have been the subject of these threats, and they end up destroying his career over nonsense. Dwight Eisenhower, Franklin D. Roosevelt, Bill Clinton all survived having mistresses. This did not affect his job. It did not affect national security. So many people in the government knew about it that blackmail would have been fruitless and preposterous. I think it's a darn shame that the FBI exceeded its bounds here. I think this is part of the old FBI-CIA rivalry. They couldn't wait to knock off the big guy in the other camp.
That's an interesting point, but I got to tell you, Judge, my sense of this, I've been around this town for about 25 years, my sense of it is there's more there than this.
Well, I very much agree with you, Brian.
Yeah.
Not because I trust and love and admire your skills in this field.
Not only
it's rather obvious. Something else seems to be coming out each day. There must have been something unbelievable going on in Benghazi, the lengths to which the government is going to prevent us from finding out.
Well, your Jennifer Griffin has been doing some great reporting on this, so I know that the guys at Fox News will stay on it. Tell us about the book.
Well, look, the book is written because we have an example 100 years ago of 2 presidents, a Republican and a Democrat, who hated each other, only met once during their lives so far as we know, actually ran against each other, but both shared a couple of common values, and those values were the Constitution is not the supreme law of the land, it's merely a guideline, and the federal government can write any law and regulate any behavior and tax any event that it wants. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
This is the progressive era. This is the beginning of the long march of federal regulation of private personal behavior. And it begins in a very benign way. It begins with handouts and stimulus packages and TARP programs. They weren't called that in those days. And it begins with the federal government giving money to individuals who can't or don't or won't work for the first time in American history.
Well, it sounds like you've written a historical cautionary tale.
It is a cautionary tale, except that the election last week is almost, not quite, because we're all still here and we basically have our freedoms. The election last week is almost the culmination of the welfare state, the federal welfare state that Wilson and Roosevelt started.
Yeah.
Prior to this progressive era, the federal government, for the most part, stays within the confines of the Constitution and deals with issues that are truly federal in nature: war, national defense, the post office, prosecution of crimes that occur over interstate lines, destruction of federal property, guaranteeing copyrights, patents, and trademarks. But after this era, we find the federal government regulating booze, outlawing alcohol, having a printing press to print cash, taxing the income of individual Americans at whatever rate they wanted. Woodrow Wilson, for example, promised the income tax would never exceed 3%. By the end of his presidency, it exceeded 90%. Yeah. So this is a period from which we can learn a great deal about how we got to the depths that we're in today.
Judge Andrew Napolitano's new book is called Theodore and Woodrow, How Two American Presidents Destroyed Constitutional Freedom. And I think, Republicans who don't know their history might be surprised to hear GOP icon Theodore Roosevelt mentioned here, but he really was our first progressive president, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. He precedes Wilson in office. Remember, his only public job prior to becoming vice president was to be police commissioner of the city of New York. He loved police. He loved cops. He loved the concept of law enforcement. In fact, without any legislation from the Congress, he established a federal police department, and he dispatched them to investigate crimes when he didn't like the way the locals were investigating local crimes. You know what they're called today?
What?
The FBI. Of course, eventually Congress would authorize it, but during his presidency, this was secret and wasn't authorized by Congress. He's McKinley's vice president. McKinley is killed during the first 3 months of his presidency, so TR serves almost a full term, having succeeded McKinley. Then he serves a second full term. Then he retires. Then he decides he wants to come back. And when he comes back, he runs against his former friend, William Howard Taft and Woodrow Wilson. Taft and he split the Republican vote. Wilson gets elected president with far less than a majority of popular votes, but he continues the progressive policies and actually perfects what TR started to do in a way that William Howard Taft could never have done.
And Taft tried to roll back a lot of the things that TR did when he was president, didn't
Very
he?
difficult to do because, Larry, you're talking about people's lives. Think about rolling back Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid. The only way you could do it would be to stop it for young people who don't require it today. You couldn't do it for seniors. You couldn't do it for my parents who are in their 80s. I'm sorry I said that, Mother. Because they have planned their lives on this, because they paid in all of their working years into Social Security. So this cannot be undone overnight, and it can only be undone with a sea change in our thinking that recognizes the bigger the welfare state gets, once we reach that tipping point of 50%, then we have less than half the country paying for the subsistence of more than half the country.
Right. Well,
people learn that the public treasury becomes a public trough. They will only send to Washington the elected representatives who'll bring home the biggest piece of the pie.
Well, where have you heard that before, Larry? That's been sort of one of my mantras of late. Yes. Hey, Judge, you're about a minute late. What's the great truth that you learned in doing this book?
The great truth that I learned is that without fidelity to the Constitution, we will lose our privacy, we will lose our dignity, we'll lose our freedom, and we'll lose our property. And the federal government, which appears and sounds benign and beneficial, will take a lot more from us than it gives us. That's the great lesson of 100 years ago. That's the lesson that we lost in the election between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama last week.
Quickly,
Brian,
Judge.
I miss you, my friend.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Judge Napolitano. It's good to see you.
Quickly, Judge, we're about to talk about the cabinet reshuffle. Who'd you like to see replace Eric Holder?
Ron Paul.
Yeah, hold your breath, Judge. That's Judge Andrew Napolitano's brand new book, Theodore and Woodrow. It's out now. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Judge. Good talking to you.
It's 8:15 on 105.9 FM and AM 630 WMAL. Now, traffic and weather together every 10 minutes. First on the fives, here she is, my choice for Attorney General, Jamie Sullivan.
Well, thank you. I don't know if I'll take it, but I'm glad that I'm your choice.
Maybe Secretary of Transportation.
Oh, sure. Oh, I love
Right?
that one. Okay, I'll take